Hey everybody, it's George the Antique Nomad, and I've been doing some shopping. Hi, I'm George the Antique Nomad. Come with me as I wander the country in search of valuable vintage, amazing antiques, and cool collectibles. We'll buy, sell, and trade at antique malls, shops, and shows, estate sales, flea markets, thrift stores, anywhere people go to find really interesting things that just aren't made anymore. So come on, let's go. Thanks for joining me again. I have been out with some other YouTubers and got a chance to meet them and had a really great time. You're going to start seeing videos coming from all of us from that experience. It was just really neat to see the real world and the online world come together. And I'm also getting ready for the first show that I've done since March. And so I'm really excited about that. We've got a place up in northern Michigan, Petoskey, that's having a show July 4th and 5th. And they are phase 5. They're doing all sorts of controls to make sure that everybody is safe and well and has a good time. So if you're in the Petoskey area, I'll hope to see you there. And I've got a whole bunch of new things that I bought in anticipation. So let's talk about some of those. You get the sneak preview. On the right of me and your left, let's start with, well, important things. See, speaking of safety, well, you know, you need a safety helmet, right? This is better than a mask, don't you think? Maybe I'll wear this all weekend. Actually, I'm hoping someone will buy it. It's an old fire helmet. It was made, apparently, it says in Canada, it's the Super Chieftain Safety Helmet. We'll see if you can see that. It's marked in there. And it's got that great old classic red with the brim and the ridge in the middle. It's going to date to probably the 60s or so, and I just thought it was really cool. I have a good success rate with firefighting collectibles, so I always look for that sort of thing. I'm also going to take this lovely stacking barrister's bookcase. Barrister, of course, is the term the English use for a lawyer, and the reason they call them stacking lawyers' bookcases is because you see them in old law offices a lot, but you see them in homes a lot too. Each one of these sections comes apart, so you can stack them as high as you dare and fill them with as much as you want. You'll see them as few as 2 stacks and as high as, gosh, I've seen in as many as 8 piled on each other. Several companies made these, so you have to make sure they go together, but the best part is that you pull this out and you have an immediate dust cover for your books. And that's just a really great feature. That's why people like these. They were very popular around the 1910s. So this is a little over 100 years old. And if you are standing straight, they actually work very easily. They sell for as much as $200 a level now. So this one potentially could go for as much as $1,000, although I won't price it that high. And they're great for display. So I'm looking forward to displaying at the show. And some of the things I have to display at the show are already sitting out. So we'll just go through. Today is packing day. I have to drive to Michigan tomorrow so that I can be there in time to get ready. I've got a couple of decoys here I wanted to show. These just look like the kind of things that guys made. And of course, the old-time decoys from the early 1900s are very much prized. But these are later, and a lot of times I don't pay attention to these, but I found out that some of the designers from the 1980s are considered very, very collectible now, and this is one of them. It's got a mark on the bottom. It says Googe, 86. And Mr. Googe was considered very good at this craft, and it turns out that these online go for somewhere in the $100 to $150 range, and sometimes more. This one has his signature as well, Bob Googe from, it says, this is a Lachlan Grail, so he actually marked what the bird was on there, and you see his signature again. So when you see these in thrift stores or estate sales or for sale in consignment shops or places, they may just look like decoration, but do take a look at the names because there's starting to be some accepted and acknowledged artists that are going for real money. I got a large collection of these, and I'll just show one. I've shown a few in other videos, but this one's really sweet because it's the hummingbird. And these are marked on the bottom. This one's Ruby-Throated Hummingbird by Andrea, and this is Andrea by Sadek. And Andrea was his daughter. Sadek was one of the co-founders of this company. They're still in business, actually, but this was made in Japan, and they make things in other countries now. They don't do anything like this anymore. This is hand-painted porcelain bisque, and when these came out in the 1970s, they were every bit the quality of the Boom and some of the other bird figures that were already being sold, but they were made in Japan, and that was a real surprise to people because Japan hadn't been considered a place for good quality ware up until about that time. These sell anywhere in the $30 to $40 range typically, depends on the bird and the size. And then I had to get this because one of my viewers has a neat collection of these that he shared with me. And a couple of different companies made these. This particular one is NAPCO, which is the National Potteries Company out of Cleveland, Ohio. They were actually made in Japan again and very well detailed. This is about the time that the Japanese really start doing really high quality ware and get away from the reputation of being the cheap knockoffs that are copies of other things. It's got a 1970s style NAPCO impressed mark on the bottom, which is a little different than the paper labels we saw before. The importing company NAPCO was National Potteries of Cleveland, but all of their things were made in Japan. And then you may have seen in a video where I found this piece. I'm taking it to Michigan because a friend of mine who is a dealer and going to be at this show loves McCoy, and I'm not sure she has this piece. So if she doesn't, this will be for her. This is going to date to about 1960, and it's got a nice mark on it. And these sell for somewhere in the $30 range approximately now. I've been selling a Native American basket collection for a while, and I had the good fortune to come across a few more. And while I still have a lot to sell from the collection, I added to it because I found three that I thought were really nice and good quality. The big one in my right hand, I'm going to show you first. It's macaw. Macaw is the very, very northwest tip of Washington State, so the very farthest northwestern point in continental United States. And their reservation out there is known for being originally where the whaling boats went from up into the Strait of Juan de Fuca to go whaling. And whales and ducks are motifs that are very, very often seen in macaw basketry, and this has both because it's a large piece. You have cedar planking on the bottom, and the nice thing about this one, it's got just a little wear around the edges, but it was used. It actually came from the Shoalwater Reservation in Washington, I believe, a little bit south of there. The folks told me that when I bought it. And they, the nice thing is it's got the original vegetable dyes, and you can tell because there's a little bit of fading in the color. Not a lot, but a little. This is a big showy piece. While this could have been used by somebody on the reservation, it also could have been made just for tourists to buy. It's in good condition, that matters a lot, and the size is really good. Now, people really like the little small lidded macaw baskets, but this one, because it's big and showy, I imagine will sell somewhere in the $125, $135 range. So it's nice to have something fresh and new to add to the collection I already had. And then these pieces, the one in my right hand, this is pomo. You'll notice the stitching is a little different. Well, weaving, I should say. It's not stitched. But the weaving is different. It has this blocky aspect to it. There's good books that can tell you all about how they did these and how the different weaves indicate the different makers. Again, you see the color is stronger on the bottom than on the top. That means that this is not a synthetic dye because it actually faded with age. And that's in some ways a good thing. It gives them a mellowness. It also tells you that it's not a new piece. And then this one has a nice swirl pattern to it. A lot of times people assume with the top stitching, Thank goodness they're non-breakable. Most people figure with the top stitching that they are going to be maybe an Apache tribe, but I believe that this is actually Papago. Now, I love my bookends. Anyone who's watched me for a while knows I always like to pick up bookends, and I especially like these big, heavy bronze ones from about 1915 to 1920. This was an era where people were really wanting to become better educated. And so you'll see famous authors like Bryant and Holmes, for example, philosophers, and also philosophy. I'm going to show you another pair I got as well. And they are really heavy and substantial. They'll definitely hold a book. I also got this set, and this has the same motto on both, which says, "The man of wisdom is the man of years," by Young. And it's ironic that he said young because he's talking about being old and wise. And hopefully I'm getting wiser. I certainly am still learning a lot, but that's what life's about, right? And on the back, these have the mark that says B and H. This is a mark to look for. This is Bradley and Hubbard. They were a metalworking company. They made table lamps. They made bookends. They made all sorts of different things of metal. Bradley and Hubbard is considered a premium name in the marketplace. They were back when these were made, and they are considered that by collectors now. Both of these sets should sell somewhere in the $50 to $60 range. This is a cute little mug. This came from an estate in Florida, and it says Prosit, which is essentially German for cheers, and it says something about Bohème, Bohemia, on the top. It was probably made by the Gerz company, G-E-R-Z, of Germany. It does not have any sort of a mark. The reason that steins have these lids is because during the Black Plague, they started to realize that flies and other insects getting into the beer were not helping them with the spread of disease. And so that's where the lids came from. So it actually dates all the way back to then. And then people just liked the style, so they were made this way ever since. This one is a ½ liter. It says so right around the collar here. It might be hard to see, but I think we can get it in there where it says 1/2 L. And larger is better. This is transferware. Hand-painted is more valuable than transferware, but even with all that, this is a sweet little piece, and he's got a good face, and he's having a lot of fun. So I imagine that this will sell probably in the $50 range. Speaking of Germany, now people have been avoiding Hummels for a long time because the market has been down, but I'll tell you, there are still collectors, especially for these larger pieces, and especially where the Madonna is involved. Maria Innocentia Hummel was the name of the Franciscan, I believe she was a Franciscan nun, who started these cherubic-looking figures in the 1930s. Adolf Hitler was not a fan because he didn't like the religious references, so he didn't allow them to be made during the Second World War. And right after the war, she died. But her original designs and all of the things that she had left behind became the basis for the Goebel Company, which you see this one has the Goebel mark, West Germany. This is a later mark from about 1980. But her things became the basis of the designs, and then the GIs stationed in Germany started sending them back to America, and it caused a huge craze. The earlier pieces have a crown mark on them, which was Goebel's original factory mark. They then did a B, a large fat B and a V, and that was their earliest B mark. There's several B marks. It's easy to date Hummels by the marks. And then they became so popular that our market eventually became flooded with them, and that's why the prices are down. But this one still sells for about $60. Now, it used to sell for about double that. So the fact that this one's in good condition, it's large, and it has the deer looking at the Madonna makes it more desirable, and I believe it will find a buyer. Well, I'll take things that George would say for $100, Alex, because one of the things that George would say is, I should have my black light so I could show you how nicely this custard glass glows under a black light. It does. I can't show you because I don't have my black light with me, but I can show you the piece up close. It's hand painted. I believe that this is a Heisey piece. I could be wrong about that. A couple of companies made custard glass about 1910 when this was made, but it is a sweet little shape. It was not very expensive, and of course with all the interest in Vaseline and uranium glass now, I figure that somebody is going to really enjoy this. So we're going to take this and see if somebody likes it. And then I wanted to show this piece. I want to give credit to Jeffrey from Real Nifty Vintage for helping me find this. Fatbird Finds, another YouTube channel, was one of the group that met this last weekend, and we ran around and went to a bunch of places and went shopping and just had the best time together. What a great group of people. I can't wait to do it again. And I'm really looking forward to meeting a bunch of you. Again, my goal from the beginning with my YouTube channel has been to bring the real world of antiquing and the online world together. So it was really neat to meet everybody in the flesh and just have such a great entertaining time and share stories and talk shop. And we all learned something. We all gave each other ideas. It was terrific. When we were in Layman's Antiques, which is the Laura of Fatbird Finds, her mother runs that store, and that's what got her into antiques and vintage. And we were in her store. Her mother is a great gal. This is in Paducah, Kentucky. We had a really nice conversation. She's been doing this for years, and she just loves it like I do. And she said, look around, and I found this print. This is a Maxfield Parrish print. Sometimes they're signed in a way that's really obvious. This one, the signatures and the information are in very small type in the corners. But he was really known for these very ethereal, generally outdoors designs, often with great grand mountainscapes that remind me of the West, which I have to admit I'm missing the West Coast. This is usually the time of year I'm there. And this one actually on the back even has an ink stamp that you may be able to read that says Maxfield Parrish, just to let you know for sure that it's his, because R. Atkinson Fox, which was a contemporary of his, also did similar looking work, although his are a little less well defined. Maxfield Parrish was one of the few commercial artists who became a big success during his lifetime, so he actually got to reap the benefit of having made these beautiful pictures. And this is a nice small size. The market for these is still pretty good. They were reproduced in the 1960s and the 1990s, but this one's definitely original from the 20s with that paper on the back and the marking and everything. And I believe it should sell for around $40 to $45 these days. Now, this isn't going to be like one of my regular videos where I'm able to ticker in a whole lot of extra information for you because I've got a pack. I really am on a deadline today, but I wanted to share with you some of the things I'm taking, so I'll at least give you a quick rundown on some cameras. I'm taking a bunch of cameras to the show in Michigan, and I'll show you a few of the highlights. You can get more information from me on cameras if you watch Patrick at Trusty Huckster Mercantile. He also came down and was part of the shopping group this weekend, and we did a deeper dive on his channel about cameras a few weeks ago, and I showed a few of these there, but I'm going to show you a few of the highlights as well. This one, it says on the top, is a Rainbow Hawkeye. It says it right on the strap. And this one is by Kodak. What's interesting about the Kodak Rainbow Hawkeye in this case is it is indeed a rainbow color. It matches my shirt. That was something they did around 1930 because they realized that the Depression had come and they needed to get people to want to buy new things at a time when a lot of people didn't have money anymore. So all the old black cameras started being made in color for a brief period of time. The colors are hard to find, and red is especially desirable. So this one, I believe, is somewhere in the range of, gosh, I think $95 or $100, if I'm not mistaken. Another camera that sells for about that price is this one. These are from the 1950s, and this is a reverse stereo camera. I've even got the original paperwork on this one. It's stereo because you take the picture and you get two pictures at the same time. There's actually two rolls of film, and the dual lenses take the same picture at a slightly different angle. If you are old enough to remember Viewmasters as a kid, they use the same concept. If you ever look at the Viewmaster reel, you'll notice the same picture is on opposite sides of the wheel. That's because when you look at it, or if you've got the old stereo cards with the viewer where you pull them out and it seems like the same picture next to each other, they were actually taken at a slightly different angle because of what is called parallax. You can test parallax by putting your finger out in front of you and then blink again, and it looks like your finger moved just a little bit. That's because when your eyes work together, they fill in the blank, and so you see things in one place, but each eye actually sees it at a slightly different angle. Well, this camera saw everything at a slightly different angle too, and when you match that with your eyes through parallax, you get a three-dimensional view. That's why we have two eyes, and that's why this camera would take two pictures. They were a really neat thing that a lot of good amateur photographers started wanting to play with in the 1950s, like the people on this. And so they're pretty desirable now. They usually sell for around $100 as well. And let's see, without going too deep into cameras, because like I said, you can get a lot of this information from that other video, but I wanted to show these because after Kodak did the colored pieces, they started doing these very streamlined cameras instead. You'll notice the old typical Brownie, which is usually a $15 camera. Well, this one, the Brownie Junior with the Art Deco front, sells for about $50 to $60 because of the Art Deco front, and in this case because it has a box, which adds value. And this one is also very streamlined. This is the Kodak Bantam, and look at that great Art Deco streamlining on it. These were both designed by Walter Dorwin Teague. He did a lot of Art Deco designs for Kodak in the 1930s, and they are some of the most desirable and valuable cameras. I believe this one sells for over $100 as well. The reason for that is, again, they were trying to find reasons to get people interested in cameras again, and the technology was improving, but they also wanted the design to be neat because they figured that anything that looked modern would make people feel like they needed a new one. It's kind of the beginning of planned obsolescence. The people who were behind this, Walter Dorwin Teague and some of the other designers, were a group who went to the 1925 Art Deco exhibition in Paris, and the reason they went is because none of them were invited to show there. And it made the American designers really angry, but the Parisians said, well, you're just derivative, you're just copying what we do. And they went over and saw the exhibits and realized it was true, we were just copying what they did. So that's when American design starts to go into streamlined modern. That was after arts and crafts, which gets credit too as a modernist beginning for American design. This was the next phase in design where America did its own designs and stopped copying everybody else. And that ended up being very important. That was part of what led to 50s modernism and American design and companies really taking over the market for many things in terms of consumer products all over the world. And then this is just neat looking. This would have been a lens that would have gone on one of the old plate cameras from around 1900. And a lot of people, there are photographers who use all this old stuff. You can get old replacement film for all these old cameras. You can even do old plate film. But a lot of people just buy these to set on a desk or in a display because they're really neat looking. And then one last camera here. This is a little secret miniature camera like the Robin Hitchcock song. And it is a spy camera. This one is, let's see, Yashica. The Japanese really took over the market for cameras because of a lot of technological advances they made with the SLR cameras. And then they ended up developing all these little spy cameras. These sell for $40 to $50 a piece now as well. Ah yes, you may hear the train in the background, but I'm going to just keep on going because it doesn't seem too loud today. Now we saw a motto on bookends. This is a motto on a piece of wood, but this was made commercially, this transfer. And it says, early to bed, early to rise, prompt at 10, hang up your ties. There was something about the 1910s, I think between the suffragette movement, the prohibition movement, people were really looking to refine civilization and culture and really looking to solve problems and to develop a more regimented way of living that would keep things in order. And being orderly was very important, and that's why that motto is there. And this would have been a tie rack. I just thought it was really neat. It's a slab of wood. That was a very common way to present things in the 1910s because it was a natural look. It went well with mission arts and crafts interiors, which were very woodsy as well. And I just thought that the motto was cute. I have to admit, I have neither worn nor hung up a tie in years, but I guess I could start if I wanted to be proper and orderly. And a couple more Native American pieces I got. This is a neat little set of little spear points and bone implements. Little Riker mounts is just what they call these little specimen mounts with these sorts of things are a neat display, and a grouping like this probably should sell for around $40. And then this basket is also Pomo from Northern California. You can tell again by the blocky nature of the way that it's constructed. Again, the colors are good. These little baskets like this, it seems like lately a lot of people want little rather than big. A lot of people have collected a while, or they just want a few things on a shelf. So they're not looking for a lot of giant things, they're looking for small bits. And these typically are selling for $35 to $45. And then a couple of other things. This is actually made out of a bone fragment, and this would have been carved in Alaska. It's got some sort of a carver's initials on the back as well. And then this little guy is Japanese from about 1950, but he just had a really cute look, and I like mixing the Latin American looking pieces. This would have probably been used as a ring holder by a sink. Sometimes I'll put them with kitchenware, sometimes I'll put them with my Native American items to bring in some color. It's just fun. It's a little thing I can sell for about $10 that someone will think is cute. Now there's a couple of things you can't see, so give me a moment and I'll lift them up into the camera view. I got this set, which is the Sereno design. And this was made by Anchor Hawking, of course, as it says. This is mint in the original box, and I got this at a flea market recently. I think they charged me all of $5 or $7 for it. I have not really bought a lot of this pattern in the past, although I was aware that people were starting to collect it. It's very avocado, it's very 1970s, but I love that it had its original display box where you could tip it up and you get the billboard essentially with it. It has its original sticker on the butter dish. I'll take the lid out so you can see that. So this has never been used. And unused in the box, these are selling online for about $45. It's got the salt and pepper shaker, the cream and sugar with the lid, and the butter dish. And I find butter dishes in general are pretty easy sales these days. A lot of people like glass butter dishes because they don't get messed up with the grease from the butter. A lot of the ceramic ones eventually get stained. It just leaks through into the glaze. Oh, we're getting lots of happy sounds today. You may hear the warning whistle. We have a tornado warning signal in our town that goes off every Wednesday as a test. And gee, it's Wednesday, so all the fun all at once. I wanted to show this too. I got this when I was shopping with the group in Cadiz, Kentucky. I saw this red escutcheon around the knob that turns to keep it shut here, and could tell that it looked like a 1950s piece. And when I see two old leather purses in Western Kentucky, I get interested in them because generally speaking in this part of the country, these were not made in Mexico. They were actually made in Catawba, Kentucky at the state penitentiary. Leathercraft was a skill that they would teach inmates back then, which frankly I think was a pretty good idea. They figured it might be hard for them to get a job on their own with a criminal record, but they thought if we give them a skill, they may be able to do something for themselves and stay out of trouble. And so they would teach them how to do these, and this one is actually prisoner made. And that makes it more collectible and a little more interesting even than the Mexican ones. It's in pretty good shape. The handle and the strap are really good. It's got a little bit of wear inside. And sometimes that bothers me, but I didn't let it bother me with this because the overall look is good. And I think that someone would be able to find plenty of good use out of it. And it's a great size, and I just thought it was really a cool thing. Okay. This is heavy, so I'll hold it as best as I can. This is Japanese bronze. This is an ikebana pot, and it's a 3-piece. This comes out and is removable, and then you have, let's see if I can do it. There you go, and then you have the base and the centerpiece there. These bronze pieces were made in the late Meiji and early Nationalist era primarily. I'm going to put it down because it's really heavy. But I got this at an auction in Florida. I think I paid about $60 for it. Out west, I always get between $135 and $150 for them. And they sell for that amount online as well. And it's just neat to have something showy and big. I like metal work if it's well done. And I thought this one was a nice one. A couple more things that are down on the floor that I'll just hold up for you. This is a nice oval hooked rug. This came from a Florida estate when I was down there helping with family matters. And it's a nice oval. These colors, it's funny, you look at these colors and you think, wow, it's avocado and harvest gold, and this must be from the 1970s. But actually, these colors were very popular in the late 30s, which is when this dates from. You can see on the back that the colors are pretty strong. It hasn't faded badly. It's not rotten. One thing you want to do with these, if you're looking at them, is actually grab them and pull them a little bit to make sure that they're not separating, because sometimes they've been left in a humid environment or a wet place and they will start to rot. And it may not look like it on the surface, but you want to make sure that this thing can hold up to wear, because people who buy these want to use them. I got this one in a long runner, which I won't show you because I'm standing on it, but they are hooked rugs that were primarily made. There were factories making these, but most of these were made by people who made them as art pieces or just for something to do. Some of them can be quite elaborate, and some of them can be rather valuable. These, I think, would sell probably in a $35 range. Okay, let's see. Wow, I really have been looking for fresh stock. It's been really fun to have a reason to shop again. There wasn't anything open, of course, for a long time, and so it's been kind of a scramble to have new pieces to be able to bring to a new show I've never done. And I've managed to find some pretty cool things. So let me step to this side and show you some Swung glass. And we have baby, and we have middle size, and then we have this gigantic thing here, which I just love. In fact, I really like all of these Swung pieces for different reasons. This one's just got a real nice clarity, and then the bright orange on it, I think, is rather attractive. Let me hold that out where you can see it a little better. All of these are going to be late 1960s era. This one is black. We don't see a lot of black, and when we do, it's pretty much always Fenton glass. Fenton did hobnail and Swung glass, and they also did this, which was called thumbprint, where it has the elongation that stretches out when they would swing the glass. Fenton really didn't do a lot of Swung glass until the late 60s because they mainly did traditional styles, but they realized that the market was moving away from traditional then and they wanted to keep up, so that's when they started doing these. And I think the black is really striking. You just don't see a lot of it. This one I showed in my Greenville video when I bought it because it's an unusual color. This is Viking glass. You can tell by these lobes. That was something that was part of the Viking epic line. But this pink color was only done in the late 1970s for a very brief while. They did pink. They also did a uranium or Vaseline glass, as they called it. The Vaseline glass ones are very hard to find. And really, this pink color is not common either. They did a lavender about the same time. This was in the late 70s when these colors started to come back into decorating. They really came on strong in the 80s, but by then Viking glass was done. So you don't really see very much of the pink because right when it was starting to become popular, they went out of business. Another very pretty glass piece. This is black amethyst. This is from the 1930s. And look at the very pretty woman holding up the bowl. Now, in the late 20s, black amethyst was very, very popular. And the reason that they call it black amethyst is because they can't really do black glass per se. It won't be bright enough for you to see, but if you were to look in the sunlight, especially right here where there's a little piece that's kind of thin, you would see that it is actually a bright, dark purple color. And it's so dense that it appears black to the eye. That's how black was done. I believe this piece to be 1930s because it has enameled flowers on it. This was a way for them to extend interest in these lines in the early 30s. Now you think, wow, Depression glass, and this is elegant glass of the Depression era, so if you had some money you would pay for this as opposed to the stuff that came in the soda boxes. But actually the stuff in the soda boxes, those companies were some of the few that did well during the 1930s because those companies were producing colorful, fun glass that was affordable to people and different from anything that people had had before. So they really did well, and these pieces are something left from that period. She's just wonderful. I have to be honest, she's not Cambridge glass, and she's not Fostoria glass either. Her mark on the bottom is hard to read, but it's 5th Avenue, New York, and I believe that it is, I can't really make it out. It's not Dior, it's Dorsey, I believe, and I believe that was actually a cosmetics and boudoir item company. So my guess is that they had this made for them by one of the Ohio companies, and I really need to do a little more research. This might get packed or it might go to my mom because she collects these, and I'll get out of the way so you can see the kitty cat. This is flame work or lamp work, but with these elongated legs. These usually date back again to Depression era. They're just very cute. These would have been very inexpensive new. A lot of them would have been broken over the years, but this guy's got his tail, he's got his legs, he's got his whiskers, he's all there. And I thought he was pretty fun, especially with those googly eyes. I have a viewer who is really getting deeply interested into playing cards, and so I thought of her when I found these this weekend. These are Rondo circular playing cards, and I thought it was really fun because of the shape. This one's the Joker. It had both Jokers. That is important. Playing card collectors want 54 in a deck, and if it doesn't have all 54, including the 2 Jokers, they're not so interested. The thing is, a lot of people at one time got interested in collecting just the Jokers, so a whole lot of these are missing one. So it pays to take time and count through. I don't think this was used very much. It actually has very little evidence of wear. I don't think they've been shuffled. They may be brand new in the box, but they were all there, and so I picked those up, and they have a really fun intersecting spoke and reel design on the back that I thought was attractive too. So while we're on the little bits here, let me take a look with you at some little things that mean a lot to me. I got a couple of railroad-related items. This one is a fireman's badge, or actually a hat badge. You can see where a ribbon or something to attach it to the hat would have gone through. The fireman was the bottom position on the train. My grandfather was a fireman on a train, and it was very difficult work because you had to basically keep shoveling the coal into the engine to keep it running. And that was not a pleasant job. So that was kind of your entry-level position if you were working on in the engine of the train itself. This one, on the other hand, dates to the diesel era. This one is dated, I believe, 1964, and it's a tie bar for the Baltimore and Ohio, the B&O, which was the first railroad in the country back in 1829. And this one has the date on it. This is a safety award, which means somebody did a good job of not getting themselves or anyone else killed, which was not the easiest thing to do. The trains were a pretty dangerous place to work for a long time. So that's significant to someone. This just made me laugh, and my rule is if something makes me laugh, I buy it. This is from Nashville, Tennessee Chemical Company, and their lovely product, I'll get out of the way so it'll focus, is ox guanos. This is a pencil. You take the cap off and you've got your pencil on the inside and then your eraser on the back. And I think the idea of these in these tubes, which were done around 1940s and 50s, was so that it'd be easy not to lose, and also so if you were working, you didn't break the end of the pencil off every time you bent over or were doing something. Now, I'm bringing a lot of tools. I've got some good vintage tools, some Stanley planes that are rather valuable and things that are coming to the show, and I also bring a little case of pocket knives, so I'm always looking to refresh. Again, let me get out of the way. There is Snap-on tools. Snap-on is collectible in and of itself, but the main reason I got it is it's also a Swiss Army knife. There was a period of time where, like everyone else, in recession times especially, companies look to start making swag for other companies because it's something that they can give away to remind people of their product, and it's something that the companies who are producing things can do that is something to keep them going while they wait for the economy to improve. This one at the bottom of the base here, I don't know if it'll show, but that says Victorinox. I'm sorry, that actually says, is it Victorinox? This is important. Yes, Victorinox. There were two companies that were approved by the Swiss to make Swiss Army knives, and that was Wenger, W-E-N-G-E-R, and Victorinox. Victorinox ended up buying Wenger, and that's the reason that they are the producer of Swiss Army knives now solely. So this would have been sometime probably just before that merger. The merger, again, was to save money. And so the fact that it's a Victorinox and a Swiss Army knife makes this not just some little advertising piece, but something that Swiss Army knife collectors will really prize. And I believe it should be worth somewhere in the $35 range. And then we get into smoking collectibles. I got a very large collection of pipes and lighters, so let's take a look at a few of those. I picked out some of the highlights to show you. This one's cool because it's an old ski boot. And let me get out of the way where you can see, oh, we have a lawnmower going outside. This is a day of many, many noises. But I am on a deadline to pack, and I want to make sure I get a good video for you. So you're going to get it in the raw form, noises and all. Anyway, this thing is cool. It's going to be from about the 1950s. It's got most of its paint in good shape, and I just love that it's on the ski. I would think that a Figural lighter like this would probably sell for around $20 to $25, possibly more. I don't really sell a lot of these online because even though these haven't had fluid in them, you never know. They're not always the greatest thing to ship. This one, in 1912, Ronson was the one who came up with the original of these that was a lighter shaped like a pistol. This one is a later piece, and this one is a Macho-Matic, and it's made in USA, protected by foreign patents, and the foreign patents are in Canada and Japan. The reason you would patent something in other places is so that the Japanese, for example, couldn't make knockoffs of it because it was patented in their country as well. And this one is going to date to about 1970. It's just a very cool looking piece. These were really not cheap when they were new. I remember getting my father something like this for Christmas way back when he was still a smoker. And that cost, I think, $30, and that was, gosh, 35 years ago. So they're not cheap, and they're not cheap now. I expect it'll sell for at least that today. We're going to take a quick break to tell you just a little about the channel, and then I'll be back with a surprise friend mail package, and then we'll show you more of what I've been shopping for lately. We'll be right back with more of this video. If you're enjoying it, please hit thumbs up to like it, hit subscribe below if you haven't already subscribed to the channel, and hit the bell to be notified of new videos. I do a new video every Wednesday at 8 p.m. Eastern, plus bonus videos. And if you comment, if you subscribe, if you like, it really helps us and it doesn't cost you anything. So thank you for that, and now back to the video. Well, I wanted to show a couple of boxes of friend mail I got. My viewers have been really supportive of me in so many ways, and I thank you so much. But Debbie from Chicago sent me a couple of boxes of things with instructions that they needed to find good homes, and that I am to keep what I like and sell the rest. And that is so generous. I just want to thank you so much for that. I have not seen what's in here, and so let's open it up and take a look. Okay, the first thing I see is a stack of postcards, and oh my goodness. Well, I can't show you all of these. We'll just say the first two would be demonetizing, but they're really cute and they are very hard to find. They have some lovely colored tinted, well, a lovely young lady showing her all together. And they are very hard to find, so thank you. I'm sure I'll end up having to keep those because they really can't go out anywhere, but they are really scarce, and I collect postcards, so I think I'm going to keep those anyhow. However, I can show you the rest. It looks like, yes, okay, I think we're tame on the rest. And it's a neat collection. There's a French little tour book. There's this one with a boy in wintertime. Isn't that cute? Even the back is sweet. It's got the children on the back, and this one looks like it was dated 1905. So this is right during the golden age of postcards. If you'd like to know more about postcards, right around the end of last year, I did a big video on the golden age of postcards. I had a great collection, and I really was able to show a lot of neat stuff. So that'll give you some information. This one will be neat with my Native American items I was showing you, because it's the Apache basket maker. That would be from the 30s when people started traveling across the country. There's just a whole lot of cute ones here. This one is a Canadian lumber mill with the color photo. This one shows a picture of one of the caverns. I'm not sure which one. This might be Luray Caverns in Virginia, I'm imagining. Yes, it is. Fish Market Caverns. I thought that I recognized that. I really love going into caves, and I've actually been to several of the caves around the country. Luray Caverns is really neat if you get a chance to go there. This is another neat old steamship. People like anything that has old transportation on it, and that's cool. Look at the pollution coming out of that stack. It was a different era. And then this one is the old Union train station in Chicago. The very early Union Depot with the mansard roof. I think that dated back to right after the fire in the 1870s. So there's some really, really cool stuff in here. And oh, this is really fun. This is a beautiful building. I wonder if this is still around. This is Grand Central Station, also in Chicago. So these are really cool, and they seem to, oh, and here's the old U.S. Navy Department in Washington, D.C. So these are a lot of fun, and I'm going to have, oh, and one more train station, LaSalle Street in Chicago. So, well, thank you. This is really cool. I can't wait to look through the rest of them. I will have to keep some of them as a surprise for you folks who come see me at the show. Here is something that is very collectible, and people have reactions to it, understandably so. This is Mein Kampf by Adolf Hitler. This book came out in the 1920s. It said everything that he believed and wanted to see happen, and boy did he manage to achieve it. On the back, you'll see, those who wish to understand America's aspect of the problem can do no better than to read this book. And so this is being printed, it's the complete edition. This would have been printed right around the time that the Second World War started. A lot of people wanted to figure out who was this guy and how did this happen and where did it come from. This one is dated 1939, so it's right when the war started, giving us all fair warning. So that's an interesting thing, and I do have a lot of people who are interested in Second World War information, and you know, that's, again, if you want to avoid repeating history, learn from it, and that's a good way to learn. And let's see, Debbie's a good packer. This is so fun. I haven't had anything like this to open before in this manner, and I'm just really enjoying it. Okay, this is, she really is a good packer. This might take a moment. These are cool. These are various patches and a key fob from old railroads that are not around anymore. The Norfolk Southern, the Grand Trunk, NW I think is Chicago Northwestern. And this is a safety pin here, not a safety pin, but a pin extolling the virtues of safety. Grand Trunk ran around Battle Creek, Michigan, where I was born. I like railroad stuff. I've always found the railroads fascinating. I collected railroad as a kid. Oh, here we go. And yep, it's Norfolk and Western, not Chicago Northwestern, of course. Norfolk and Western, this is a trivet that was made that shows the old streamlined trains, and it says still operational in exhibition service. This was when they were trying to get the steam trains to look like the new diesel trains, because there was really a belief on the part of the Baldwin locomotive company that diesel trains were really inefficient and would never take over the market, so they really should keep investing in the steam trains. Well, Baldwin was the first locomotive company to go out of business, so I guess they guessed that one wrong. Oh, this is cool. Fun in all states, legal in some, and I'll have to see if it's legal where I'm going. I know when I do shows out west, I cannot sell these in Washington state, but I can sell them in Oregon because this is a switchblade. And sometimes it takes a little bit to figure out how to make them go. You press a button and you press another button, and somehow this is supposed to release. So I'll have to play with it a little. I don't want to stab myself in front of you. I'm doing this really just stream of consciousness. So I will do a little looking into this, but this one was made in Italy. It's got the Milano mark on the blade, and very collectible. I have a lot of collectors looking for switchblades because they are not as common, because they are not legal everywhere. I'm not really sure why that is. I'm from Washington state, and I have yet to figure out why they are not legal there, but they're not. Oh, another neat, this is a neat thing. More railroad stuff. This is really cool because I've been really low on railroad stuff, so this is great timing to get this. This is for the Southern Pacific lines, and these were decks of cards given out in the 1920s on the train showing various attractions that you would pass along in their route. And this one is the, oh, this is from the Chiricahua Monument in Arizona. That is an amazing place in southern Arizona. There are something like 10 climactic zones in the space of a 15-mile drive up this huge mountain. I had no idea that there were alpine sorts of forms of plants and flora and fauna in southern Arizona. It's a really cool place, and all of the cards are going to have this sort of thing on it. And then on the other side, there you go again, streamlined steam train. So I said 1920s, this is actually probably going to be 30s because you look at that train and you see the Art Deco streamlining. This is Mount Shasta. You drive by there on I-5 when I go down to do the shows in California. I drive by there. Yeah, very cool. I'm very appreciative of this. I really enjoy these, and to be honest, if I didn't already have this deck, I'd probably keep it for my collection. Wow. This is neat. Boy, Debbie, you have been very generous with me, and thank you. This is a very cool piece. Chicago, I Will, 1933 World's Fair. This, I think, is probably a keeper, too. I've collected World's Fairs for years because I grew up in Seattle, which has had 2 World's Fairs. Chicago has had 2 World's Fairs. This one was made by Art Force. It looks like it would be a grill badge for a car. That is a really neat piece. I have seen a lot of Chicago World's Fair items. I haven't seen this before, so I'm very excited about this. It's, wow, this is like Christmas. And, you know, we've been home for a while like it's been Christmas, so it's great fun to see all of this. Oh, now this is neat too. These are the Nile fortune cards. And when you look at them, these are going to be, I believe, 1920s. They have the gold edge, and this one even has Revelation, the new and marvelous fortune-telling card. So it's got the old advertising cards in it. That makes it more desirable. Look at this great guy, the Sphinx, and then when you turn the back, you have your fortune on there. And there's a way you do this to decide which edge you're supposed to read. It's part of the game. News by post in a week, and imprudence will bring you the ill will of others. Oh, you better watch out for that. Don't be imprudent. Be true, he is a good friend, and a dance partner in whom you will become interested. So this was a game that you could play, and you could tell all sorts of stuff about your life, depending on how the hand was dealt. It's not trying to be official in the way that, say, well, tarot cards or something are, but they are definitely telling you wonderful and sometimes ominous things about your life. And you see a lot of this sorts of things. The fact that it has the Sphinx on it makes me think that this is going to be mid-1920s, because there was so much interest in Egypt after King Tut's tomb was discovered in 1923. So this is really cool too. I'm just flabbergasted how neat this stuff is, Debbie. Thank you so much. Let me take a look here. Looks like we've got some buckles. I do find that I'm starting to have collectors for some of these old buckles, and of course I've always liked fobs. Here's a fob. Now this one says classic issue, so that tells you that this is a later issue rather than an original from the teens or 20s, but this is for the old nickel plate road. And then here's a neat rail fan buckle with various logos from various companies on it. And then this one is the Norfolk and Western. So yeah, a lot of neat railroad items. And boy, the railroad collectors are a very devoted fan base for me and for dealers in general. Railroading was such a big part of everybody's life up until really the 1950s when jet travel finally took over. And then it looks like we've got a couple of little glass pieces here. Oh yes, okay, this is going to be fun to show. I know what this is. And this is Vaseline glass. You folks often call it uranium glass. I think there is a subtle distinction. The Vaseline is usually this yellow-green that looks like the color of Vaseline, which I'll show you in a minute, whereas uranium glass is anything that's got the uranium salts or oxides. But this one is based on, this is originally, these came out in the 1930s, and they were an Art Deco style, and the woman is bent over the glass. Now, the way we know that this one is a later edition is because the original ones under the feet said USA, or patent USA. And the ones that they redid around the 1980s and 90s, which this is, don't have that on there. So that's a way you can tell the difference. It also feels slick like newer glass does. It doesn't really matter because I just think she's really cool. And in the Vaseline color with the glowing under the black light, these are very popular and collectible in their own right. Well, that was a really fun friend mail. Thank you so much. And now I'm going to go back to the hall and show you the rest of what I'm taking to this show. Part of this smoking collection was this, which I thought was cute. This is Ask Me About Lucky Filters. There's no Surgeon General's warning, and you can look at the back and see corrosion on this pin back. This would have been for someone working in a tobacco shop, and these sell for, gosh, I don't know, $6 or $8, something like that, because people love the old Lucky Strikes because of that great logo. And then this is an ashtray from a steamship line. This is going to date sometime probably around either the 1930s or the 1950s. Of course, because of the war, there's sort of a gap where production doesn't change very much. But this was made by Shenango Pottery out of Pennsylvania, and it was called Inca-ware. That's what they called this sort of buff-colored. It really is just the color of the natural clay, so they just put a glaze over it and then transfer on top of it. So it was an inexpensive thing to make. That's why they started doing this in the 30s. The Clyde Mallory lines, I'm not sure exactly where they sailed, but there is interest specifically, just like restaurant china, railroad china. Well, steamship china is also collectible. So I think someone will like that. Another ashtray we have, this one is Venetian glass. It is yellow, yellow, yellow in swirls. It's a big, heavy clump of glass, and this would have been hand blown and then polished on the bottom. And it does not have the greasy feel of new glass. A lot of people look at this and say, well, how do you know it's not new? Well, that's why, because it doesn't feel oily and slick the way that new glass does. They anneal it differently when they're cooling it in the layer, and so it doesn't get that slickness to it. And then, of course, I think I may have shown this one before, but we've got the classic Sherlock Holmes pipe. I have a lot of different pipes for sale, but I like to show this one because it's a fun-looking piece. We've all seen the classic Sherlock Holmes style. It really wasn't something that Sir Arthur Conan Doyle mentioned in the Sherlock Holmes book, but an actor, I believe by the name of William Gillette, who played him on stage in London around 1900, decided that he wanted this so that it would stay away from his face and people could see what he was saying, and so that he could project better. And so this became the classic Sherlock Holmes pipe at that point. I was really surprised to find out that these sell for over $100. And while we're on the subject of lighters and cigarettes, I wanted to show you a couple of these. This one is the Zippo, which also has the classic Sherlock Holmes pipe marked on the bottom. These are fun, and people like Zippos. This is the later one because it's got this style of type rather than the italicized, which is the earlier Zippo logo. Zippo's still in production, so not everything you see is old. This one has some age. I think it's from the 80s. But these are Ronson. Ronson was a fellow named Aronson actually came up with the Ronson brand. He developed all sorts of things like the first lighters that could put themselves out when you let go of the switch so that you weren't still burning things. So they were the first safety lighters. And then in the 1930s, he came up with these. There were several varieties. They were Art Deco. He did some wonderful designs. He'd been an art metal worker and had a company that made metal artwork. And so this turned interior, very snazzy. A lot of people these days are using these for business cards or as a wallet perhaps instead of a lighter, or if you still smoke or have a reason to have flame with you, like, I don't know, arsonist. This is a thing that you can carry with you. Lots of these were monogrammed. That was the point. This was an expensive gift in the mid-1930s when it came out. These cost as much as $10 and $20 at a time when that would be the equivalent of a few $100s now. It's hard to imagine spending that much on a lighter these days, but at the time, these were a really novel, streamlined, again, desirable Art Deco piece, and they have fans amongst collectors today. And then this one transitions us into another category of collecting that this year especially I think will be of interest, and that's political collectors. Spiro Agnew was the Vice President of the United States under Richard Nixon, and in 1973 he was forced to resign because he was accused essentially of bribery and racketeering, I believe were the charges. And I believe he was exonerated ultimately or got a deal of some sort, but people were pretty angry about it, so put your butt on Agnew is this ashtray from that time. Political collectibles are really interesting to me because they really represent both sides of every story, and there always are two sides to every story where politics are concerned, or two faces to every story, depending on the politician. And so the things that are ephemera that represent both the pro and con side to me are very interesting and interesting to collectors. I did find a couple of other pieces. These are going to be more controversial in light of what's going on these days. This is a Wallace for President button. People don't realize that George Wallace ran for president several times, not just in 1968 and 72. He probably threw the election to Nixon in 68 because he took a lot of the Democratic vote out of the South, went to him. During the time of civil rights, a lot of people switched to him, and then he actually ended up becoming he was governor of Alabama. He ended up surviving an assassination attempt, and his attitude on race relations really changed after that. He ran again as late as 1976, I believe. And then this has also been a controversial figure lately, but this is Andrew Jackson. This was released as part of a presidential series by the Treasury Bureau of the Mint in the late 1960s, and it's got Andrew Jackson, President of the United States, 1829, and Peace and Prosperity on the back, which is kind of interesting. It shows peace pipes and him shaking hands. It sort of almost implies that he got along with the Native Americans, which was absolutely not true. He basically marched them off on the Trail of Tears and got rid of them and sent them all to Oklahoma, the ones that survived. So he was a hero at the time because the pioneer settlers really wanted the land cleared. And so he was very popular in his time. He's now seen as a very controversial figure because of the way he handled that. All of these old medallions from the Mint from the late 60s are pretty collectible. We usually see prices around $20 on them at shows. This I thought was just cute. This is going to be from the 1950s. And if your son is a Marine, well, or was a Marine back in the day, this would have been a water-based decal. This is back before you peeled and stuck. This is where you had to apply water, and then you would stick it on, and the front would stick on. So once you stuck it on, it was permanent. You really couldn't get it off. And then one other political item. I had this on my Instagram post yesterday. This is from the Jefferson-Jackson Day dinner. Thomas Jefferson and Andrew Jackson are considered the founders of the Democratic Party. And in 1956, in Kentucky, where this is from, this is talking about how they won their majority, and Chandler was the new governor, I believe, and he won by 128,000 votes. Kentucky was a Union state back then because of the coal mines. There'd been horrible, horrible things that had happened to the miners in the 1920s and 30s. And then FDR came in, recognized the unions, sent in troops in some cases to maintain order, and miners started to have rights and be treated better. And so the Democrats were very popular in Kentucky at this time. And these glasses actually are pretty collectible. I haven't found one online lately, but the last one I saw I think went for $15 or $20. And then if your attitude is that all politicians should be locked up, well, here you go. I've got a pair of handcuffs for you. Handcuffs are always a very collectible thing. These are ones that really were meant to be used. These are not novelties. They have the original key. But these were made in Japan. The American versions are actually more valuable, but people love them if they've got the keys and they work. They're usually used in displays. I don't really want to know how else they might be used. Keep those secrets to yourself. Thank you. Let's see. I think that I should talk about this piece of glass because I didn't. And this is Viking glass. This is the long neck goose, and this is the tall version. This guy's about 13 inches. If you see these not in the, sometimes they look pretty red and then they're orange at the bottom, that's amberina. Now all of them are collectible, but the ruby red was always more expensive because it costs more money for them to make. And so not so many people bought it. So if you see Viking glass animals in ruby colors, they are typically today the most expensive as well. I was quite delighted and surprised when we went to Kata's, the group of YouTubers and everyone's running around and looking at stuff. I noticed this in a booth. I saw that it was priced at $24, I believe. And I thought, well, that's pretty good because I have a customer in Florida who's been looking for the red rooster for 6 or 7 years and has not been able to find one. This isn't a rooster, but I thought I know the ruby is good, so I picked it up and was delighted to find out that these sell for well over $100 now. They're very hard to find in the large size in this color specifically. I only have found one new cocktail shaker lately. I always like to have barware because it's fun and people collect it and use it. This one's going to be from the mid-70s and it has the Irwinware mark on the bottom. And Irwinware was another one of the glass companies. They made a lot of these. They're a little different top than the old style. They're a little easier to deal with than the old style. And when you take, whoops, boy, droppy today. When you take the lid off, then you have your hole to pour and also for sifting out things if you're mixing like a fruit cocktail where there's pulp or things, that'll keep it out of there. Any of these old ones with the recipes on them are collectible. This one is black and white, which is fairly stark, but a lot of interiors are going black and white, so I think someone will like that, and I usually sell them for about $25. And let's see what else is interesting here. While we're on sin items, I found a good L&M filter cigarette ad before the Surgeon General, probably about 1950. And Chesterfield, no unpleasant aftertaste. The more valuable Chesterfield ones are the ones that have Ronald Reagan on them. He was their spokesman in the 1950s. And since we're on the topic of advertising, there's one more thing that you can't really see. I hope it will fit in the screen here because it's rather large, but yes, it does. Okay, good. Recreation room. This was from some old lounge. This is on masonite. Masonite is a type of board made of wood pulp that was heat pressed, and you can see it has sort of a boxy kind of surface to it. That's how you know masonite. It's hard like a board, but it is a press board really, and so it didn't use formaldehyde like later later particle board does. So that's a good thing. But anyway, the point of that was that masonite was developed in the 1920s, and so you see a lot of it in 1930s through 1960s or 70s before the press board with the formaldehyde comes out. It's great because it's durable and you could paint on it, you could do a surface, and some lounge somewhere decided that they wanted the recreation room. And it's really cool. It's got the dice, it's got the cocktail. It would be really fun over a man cave. I just thought this was really great. I picked it up in Tennessee. Honestly, I think it's worth $100 easy because it's a great graphic. And can you imagine nowadays with the concern about, you know, Mothers Against Drunk Driving and stuff, you would never name your lounge something like this these days. just the word wreck in it. Ugh, it's so wrong that it's just right for a collector. Okay, let's see what else we have that's interesting and fun. Well, while we're on the subject of oddities and wrecks, this is what might happen to you if you drink and drive. This guy is actually a 1970s era advertisement for a medicine. People really like these old things. I also have a couple of brain models in my inventory that I'm going to take because people like oddities. They like things that are macabre looking. This one's got all the vessels and everything because it was advertising a product that was some sort of an electronic thing made in Germany that was actually to stimulate brain waves in therapy. And while we're on the subject of things that might seem dark and interesting, I thought this was dark and interesting. This is a vestment. This would be from some fraternal order, most likely. It's velvet. It has a little bit of wear here, but I decided not to let that dissuade me because overall it was in really good shape. People really enjoy these for dress up. They enjoy them for costume, and I usually sell these for $35 or $40. Then we have a happy banner and a, well, not so happy banner. Let's start with happy. Some kid in the 1950s got to be the member of Planet Patrol and got to have this flag. I'm not sure. It says it's a space cruiser. I don't know which space guy would have been the, and it would have been a guy because we're talking the 50s. And there wasn't a lot of thought. There was thought of women going to space as scientists that you'll see in a lot of those old B movies, but they weren't usually driving the ship, which is kind of funny because now there's lots of women astronauts. So apparently, in spite of the sexist energy, they appealed to women too, and a lot of women did pursue space as a career. But in any event, this one is 50s. It's got that great Buck Rogers looking space cruiser on it. I think that's just fun as can be. This, on the other hand, is, well, a little less fun, but very collectible because this would have gone on a car in a funeral procession, and it's cloth, so this would date sometime to about 1940. And it's got the clip so that it would go probably on your wing window back when cars had wing windows, those little triangular windows that were used for ventilation. I thought this was really interesting. I find that anything funereal sells. I have people who are morticians who are collectors or whose family owns a funeral parlor. I have people who are into oddities who like this sort of thing. I have people who use them in display. So I do buy anything that is related to funeral and funereal type items. So let's go back to happy. And I think happy means happy housewares because housewares are so often really fun, bright colors. It's one of the things I really love about dinnerware and kitchen items. I thought these were fun. I keep running into these. I think I've had this set before recently, but it's this very poppy 1970s Wansetta sheet set, and it is absolutely flower power. Somebody opened it and never used it, and it's got the original cellophane. So I just thought, great, I'm going to pick that up and someone can use it in their guest bedroom or maybe make curtains or something fun out of it. I'll set that down there. And then other housewares that go with it that are also happy in nature. Whoops, I got to get that back with it. In fact, I'll show you that just for fun. This is the orange version, but that's the insert that shows you what it'll look like on your bed. So how cool is that? And then I went into a place that had this stack of dishes together. And I think that because they saw lines on the bottom, they figured that they all went together. But these are actually different makers and fun colors. And they tell a little story. So let me put this one down for a minute and tell you the story. people really talk about Fiesta ware. Everybody still loves it, it's still made, and so people really are excited about it, and they just assume that Frederick Reed, the designer, designed it in 1936, and that was the beginning of these great concentric ring patterns in dinnerware. But that's not actually true. They actually originated in Los Angeles, not Ohio, and they were part of patio living, and one of the first was the ring pattern by Bauer of Los Angeles. Here's the green plate. I'll turn it over so you can see the mark. Bauer ring came out in 1930. It was to reflect patio living. The colors were based on Mexican tile work, which was becoming very popular. It was fun, it was informal, it was bright and happy. These are great colors, and it didn't have any flowers or prissy designs on it that had been so popular with the Gibson girls. Well, this was for their daughters. Their daughters wanted something else, and people were starting to move to California in droves during the Depression, and this stuff sold like crazy. Bauer ring is very collectible. These plates nowadays probably sell for about 10 to 12 each in this condition. And there were the 4 of those plus the little bread plate. And then there also were these 2 pieces, and these were Harlequin. Harlequin was by Frederick Reed, and it was designed at the same time as Fiesta in 1936. You see, again, similar to Fiesta, the tight little concentric rings that get tighter and tighter. A lot of people who didn't know would confuse this for Fiesta because it's the same glazes, the same colors. This one is the orange red that they actually had to use uranium oxide, just like Vaseline and uranium glass uses. I think actually in this it was uranium salt rather than oxide, but it was the same thing. And so these actually are, in their original form when they were making them, were slightly radioactive. It's very, very minor. It's less than what comes out of your computer screen, so it's nothing to worry about if you're collecting it. But that's actually why the orange red was discontinued in 1941. It wasn't because of lead, it was because they had to take the uranium and use it for war material purposes. So that's why this color is scarcer than the other ones. Harlequin was never marked. See on the bottom where again it looks like rings like Fiesta ware? But Harlequin was not marked with the Homer Laughlin or any stamp because it was made for Woolworths. When companies like Hull started making jewel tea for the sale at the jewel tea and Osco drugstores, at the same time, other companies, other retailers looked and said, hey, we want something like that too. So Harlequin was developed specifically so that Woolworths only could sell it. And that's why it doesn't say anything on the bottom. Woolworth didn't want it to say Hull China Company or Homer Laughlin in this case. Hull China was the maker of jewel tea. This is Homer Laughlin stuff. And so the company name is nowhere on it. I think that's the reason that that entire stack of dishes was priced at $15. I'm pretty sure that the consignment store I went to, that they just thought, oh, a bunch of new dishes, who cares? And they didn't even look because they didn't see a mark. If it had said Fiesta, I'm sure they would have priced the pitcher alone at 30 or 40, which is what I'm going to do because that's what they're worth. And in terms of other dinnerware from that era, this was in the same place. It was $10. I bought this. Now this one is Hull China. The reason they didn't recognize that is the mark on the bottom is very faint, and the mark, if you can read it even, which you may not be able to, I barely could, but I've seen the piece before so I knew what it was. But there is a General Electric logo up here, and it says something in very faint print on this one about how it was made for the General Electric refrigerator. Hull China for Westinghouse and GE made specific pieces of china. If you bought a nice refrigerator, these came with it. And so that's why they have the GE mark. And so a lot of people don't recognize them as being what they are. But this is from the late 1930s. I paid $10. I believe they go for about $25 to $30. And while we're on china and dinnerware, Gladding McBean, that made for Franciscan ware, we think of Apple and Ivy, but their first really popular line was this. This was Coronado. It came out in 1940, and it was so popular it was made until 1954. The original colors were soft matte glazes, but they tended to scratch pretty easily, and so they started making them instead in these gloss colors later on. And the maroon was one of the later colors, so it's not as easy to find. You can see in here Franciscan ware. The company was Gladding McBean, and so G. McBee was typically the mark that we would see on these, but they went ahead and came up with the Franciscan ware name because they wanted it to be evocative, again because of the success of Bower Ring. They wanted it to be evocative of Spanish colonial, this mystique that they were creating around the idea that it was somehow Spanish style. And it was a big hit in California. I've always loved this pattern. Maroon's hard to find. There was a time when this would have sold for over $100 because it's a scarce color. Nowadays, honestly, probably $40 to $50 will be the sale price on that. And one last thing in the happy dinnerware realm, because I'm on a roll, and because I was on a roll that day, I got all of these at the same time in the same place on the same day. This is Russell Wright. Russell Wright was, along with the folks I was talking about with Kodak, one of the folks who went to Paris to the Art Deco exhibition and realized that we needed to start developing our own ware and our own styles. And so here one is. This is Iroquois China by Russell Wright. And I love this because it's the stacking cream and sugar. And what a great design. You can just easily hold it with the pinch. You carry it to the table as one piece so you have another hand free, so you can elegantly drift in with the coffee carafe in one hand and this in the other, and you don't have to make two trips. I mean, he really was that thoughtful about how he designed things. They also stack nicely in the kitchen, so if you don't have a lot of space, this is nice. They have stacking salt and pepper shakers too. Everything was to save on space and economize. The pink color is a good color and becoming a collectible color again. A lot of people are interested in pinks now. So that's a nice set, and Russell Wright does sell. It's so popular that it's actually been the feature in the LA County Historical Museum. It's been on tour. There's been a whole Russell Wright tour that went around the country and showed his various designs, everything from that to furniture. He was a big deal guy, and he's a great name to look for. And let's see, of course, got to get Jadeite every time we see it. Jane Ray by Fire King. These are the little cereal bowls. The chili bowls are a little more valuable even. Called Jane Ray because of the rays around the edge, which I think you'll see. And it's got the good Fire King mark. It's not the Fire King 2000 mark, so that means it's not the 2000 dated reissue, it's the original. And let's see, I talked about companies wanting proprietary dinnerware. These are Cattail by Sears. This was done in the 1930s, and you'll see my video next week. I'll show where there was a whole set of this. I bought the salt and pepper shakers. I probably should have bought a lot more. These were made by Universal in 1938, and only Sears could sell these. And while we're on kitchenware, two more things I wanted to show really quickly. This one is Wagner ware. Wagner and Griswold are the most collectible of the cast iron makers, and this one's neat because it's a 5 biscuit maker rather than the larger sizes, and so it's actually a little less common. I believe that's around a $30 to $35 piece. Also, in terms of happy homemaking, I got this very cute quilt top, and I'm going to pull it up here so that you can see it a little better. This one was flying in the breeze on a wet day at a swap meet, and I just had to have it because I like the butterfly appliques. I like the fact that it seemed to be pieced by hand, and I like the fact that it had a lot of 1950s fabrics in it, 50s and early 60s. You've got the little cowboy riding on the horse here. I thought he was really cute. There's another one that I have not seen. It'd be fun to find the original fabric for this. If you could ever find a bolt of it, I'm sure it's worth money, because this one is marked Twist, the Twister. So this is actually when Chubby Checker came out with the Twist in 1962, someone printed up fabric that says the Twist on it. So that gives us a pretty good idea of the date of this. It's got some bandanas that were made, they, like a lot of quilters do, they just used what they had. And it's really fun. It gives it a little bit of variety and uniqueness, and that's why people like quilts, is because each one is its own separate thing. It's all a little different from anything else, as opposed to machine made that were out of a factory. So I just thought this was really neat, and I had to pick it up. Besides which, they make really good backgrounds at antique shows because you get all this color, and when I have all these interesting, odd, different things to put in front of it, I want something that is kind of unifying, or at least draws the eye into the booth. And then we got a little bit, because we're going to Michigan, I always look for car stuff. I didn't find a lot, but I found a little. This is a neat old speedometer. I might meet somebody who knows which car this is from. It's not marked in any way. It looks like one of the independents to me, maybe a Hudson or one of those companies, as opposed to the big three. It doesn't have a Fomoco or a Mopar or a GM part mark on the back, just a stock number. But people like these. Sometimes they just like to set them on a shelf and look at them. Sometimes they're actually restoring an old car. And I noticed that the needle moves, and that means that it should work if it was hooked up again, and that matters to people. Also, little old gauges and things. This one is for microamps, so not specifically for a car, but you know, people like having this sort of thing around. I think it just reminds them of a time when America was an industrial leader, and plus they're neat looking. And then these are a little earlier than we usually see from State Farm. We've got both the water-applied decal and the car badge that would have been attached to the front of the car to show that your 1934 Studebaker had State Farm insurance. At least I think that's what that car is. I'm almost sure, because it's got the right shaped grille. From there, I want to talk just a little bit more. I've just about shown you what I've gotten recently for this show. I'll take pictures at the show and show you how it all sets up, and you'll see a bunch of other things that I already had that I'm taking to the show as well. But I did get some boudoir items. I look for them whenever I can. I haven't been finding much jewelry. I'm in a part of the country where people don't really wear a lot of jewelry. But I did find this very sweet, and I hope visible, lavalier. See if I put my hand behind it, if you can see it. You can certainly see my freckles. There we go. It's got a little seed pearl in it. These would have been very popular about 1910. This would have been something that would be given oftentimes for an engagement or the morning after a wedding at the breakfast table. And that one, I believe, is gold, rolled gold, meaning 9 karat rather than 14 karat. Still should be a $40 or $45 necklace. This little lady's pocket watch is missing its hook, but it does run. And I always pick them up if they run. I thought that was very sweet. I like the colors on the face. This one, I believe, is in, well, I was going to say it's an Elgin, but no, I think it's Hamilton, actually. And then this piece I thought was an interesting piece because you pop it open like that. You press the ends. It's got this very graphic, artistic-looking melange of people on the top. And then when you press it, up it comes, and you have the opening. Again, most people are using these as little wallets or for business cards or that sort of thing rather than cigarettes, but this was originally a cigarette case. And we'll just gently press it shut. I thought the side opening was what was really unusual about it, so I had to pick that up. Also for the boudoir, for her side, we have the Lefton Angel that says Mother. Some of these are better quality than others. I thought the painting was good on this one. Lefton was not always so careful about their painting in the early days. You can see the Lefton label on the bottom there. This will be from about 1960. Her wings are not broken. That's a common problem with these, or the butterfly rhinestone being missing. So this had everything, so I picked her up. And then this one is Joseph Originals when they were still made in Japan. It's got the Joseph Original palette mark and the Japanese paper label. It's April. She has her label. She has her little rhinestone. So I got her. I find that the birth months do fine still. I don't do well with the ones with the numbers because it's too specific to a little girl having a birthday, and nobody wants to spend a bunch of money to buy something for a really young girl like that because they're afraid it'll get broken. And then here we've got a hair comb. This one is not a particularly rhinestone studded one, but it's a nice design, and the red color is good, this transparent red plastic. This is going to date to sometime you see them starting in the 20s, and the popularity goes through into the 50s. Carmen Miranda and the big fruit hair pieces led other people to do big piled hair up until the really short haircuts of the mid-50s become popular, and then you don't really see hair combs after that much. So I've got a lot of collectors for these, and I haven't had one for a while. For his side of the boudoir, you would have this guy. This is a razor bank. It's got the hole in the top, but not in the bottom. That's how you know it's for razors rather than coins. Although you could put coins in it and you could probably get them back out because the top is open enough. This was made by the Clemensons company in California. You see them marked and unmarked, but this is the Clemensons ink stamp. They did really cute kitchenware, dresserware, this sort of thing. A lot of it's figural, and it was mainly done in the 1940s and 50s. And one last item. I wasn't really planning on saving this for last, but it's interesting, so I'm glad I did. It's another piece of dinnerware, but take a look at what it is. This is Homer Laughlin. Now see the anchor on the side. That makes this U.S. Navy wear, but why is there a clown juggling a plate? Well, Misty from Thrifter Junker Vintage Hunter was here this weekend as part of the group, and her husband works in the Navy, and she suggested that it might have been made for a Navy Family Day event. And that is entirely possible. I remember as a kid, my dad was in the Navy and there was Family Day stuff. And I remember they would give us things, but it wasn't this era, so I didn't get anything as neat as this. It's got the Homer Laughlin back stamp. The other possibility is that this plate might have been a test pattern. You will occasionally see where a company had extra overrun, like say the Navy made a big order and they produced a few too many. Well, we just need to try this other transfer decal on something and see how it adheres and whether we like the look. So sure, just use up those blanks over there. So it could also be that this was a test plate. Test plates often have disjointed graphics that don't really seem to make sense together, and test plates can be pretty valuable because dinnerware collectors say, ooh, that's something that you never see, it wasn't meant for release. If it was just a plain plate without the clown, it's worth about $8 to $10. With the clown, if it's a test plate, probably $30 or $35, and if it's a Navy Family Day celebration plate, then, you know, maybe half that amount. But in any event, it was something unusual, and I like unusual things I haven't seen before. Little mysteries get us to research and learn more in this business, and part of what I love about it is that you never stop learning. I appreciate you coming along and learning something with me about the things I have, and I hope that I am giving you information you can use, and I really enjoy the feedback I get from a lot of you folks. I've certainly been learning a lot as well. So thank you so much for joining me. I will be in Petoskey on July 4th and 5th at the Antique Show, and then I'll be back next week with another video at our regular time. So take care for now. This is George, and I'm signing off, and I've got a lot of packing to do. So thanks for being with me, and we'll see you soon. Thanks for joining me again in the fun and fascinating antique community, here where online meets the real world. Please click the subscribe button below. Click the bell to be notified when new videos upload. Leave a comment below and hit thumbs up to like this video. Links to our online social media daily posts and our items for sale are in the description. This is George at the Antique Nomad. Bye for now.